This week, my spouse and I were in discernment together about taking on some personal risk in a particular piece of activism that I'll be able to tell you about in a couple of weeks. And we were sitting there talking about how we might protect ourselves if we received harassment as a result of this action. And as we were talking, the fear and isolation started to creep into us. And I took a break, and I went to my laptop, and I noticed that signups were pouring in from a meal train that I'd made that day for one among us who could use some support in recovery from surgery. And I turned to James and I said, "We're not going to be alone in this. Who are we thinking that we would be doing this by ourselves? Like, they got us. People got us. Our community got us." And we suddenly found the decision was easy and clear to make because we remembered that we were rooted in this community that feeds each other. And it reminded me of these words of the retired UU minister Mary Wellemeyer, who writes, "In one church it was meals, prepared and frozen to be shared with those in need. Food was handed out at the door or taken where it was needed. In another church, it was casseroles brought to families whose strength was consumed by illness or disaster. Small gestures, these. Little hairs on the roots of community reaching into the soil, drawing the nutrients of earth. When we sing together, share a meal together, make soup together, the hairs on the roots reach out then too, nourishing us in ways beyond the ways we may think we know. The dark soil is full of nutrients we feed without knowing." When we are intertwined at the roots, we can do so much. I read that when Hurricane Katrina battered the historic tree canopy of New Orleans, the tree species that fared best was the live oak. Amid the storm, as we remember, houses were pulled up from their foundations, signposts and shrubs and other trees were uprooted. Human behavior was questionable at the leadership level and beautiful at the communal level. Magnolias in certain parts of the city were nearly wiped out, but the stands of live oaks stood tall, even as their branches were stripped bare by gale force winds. What was different about the oaks? They have adapted to reach for one another underground. Rather than growing deep, solitary roots, live oaks send out shallow root systems outward toward one another. And they are therefore entwined, interlocked, and held snug below the ground. The artist and founder of Soul Fire Farm, Naima Penniman, writes in Emergent Strategy, "You can't bring down 100 oaks bound beneath the soil." She continues, "So how do we survive the unnatural disasters of climate change, environmental injustice, over-policing, mass imprisonment, militarization, corporate globalization, and displacement?" She writes, "We must connect in the underground, my people. In this way, we shall survive." One of the most powerful ways I have learned the truth of this is by moving into closer proximity with our town's unhoused population through direct and mutual aid projects of the Columbia Mobile Aid Collective. If ever there was a community forced by unjust access to survive, it is this one. And if ever there was a community connected underground, it is this one. The networks and encampments created by those shut out by our current systems are no idyllic utopia. Nothing usually is. But they are a testimony to what we can survive when we grab each other's hands and have each other's back and reach our roots out wide. Communities that share what they know about resources available, that build something together as simple as a tarp over 2 tents, or as complicated as ways to meet needs in a society that makes them unmeetable. Communities that shelter each other amid the systems that cast them out. Unnatural disasters, like as we saw with COVID, that uproot and ravage the isolated middle-class families successful in dominant culture, pass through entwined communities shut out of that success like yet another rainstorm. In the dominant culture systems at hand, success and resilience are anathema to one another because success means going it alone, and resilience requires our entanglement and our mutual reliance. Y'all, the storms are going to keep coming. Threats to democracy and bodily autonomy, climate-driven natural disaster, novel disease, state violence, economic degradation, they keep coming. And perhaps those most successful are the least prepared for the onslaught. So how do we survive the unnatural disasters of death-dealing, racialized capitalism and violent heteropatriarchy as they tantrum around us? Quoting Penniman again, we connect in the underground, my people. In this way, we shall survive. And this is why nurturing community is liberation work. For every threat to collective liberation and mutual thriving we all now face, I cannot think of one that does not require rigorously connected community for us all to survive. Community that relies on one another in ways we have been taught not to. Community that is materially bound together in ways that are uncomfortable to the dominant culture. Community that shows up for each other again and again and again. Community that is like the live oaks, grasping one another underground, that finds a way through nodes of connection to get you the abortion pill you need, that flanks your family against racist harassment, that delivers medicine and soup to your porch, or helps you afford a car repair, or essential gender-affirming hormone therapy. There is not a single threat to collective liberation and mutual thriving that does not require rigorously connected community for us all to thrive. And this is why we feed each other and sing together and drop stones in water that holds something of one another's hearts. This is why we make casseroles and set up for the funeral, not as a distraction from growing the world we dream about, but as the act of growing the world we dream about. We make just an inclusive community right here, because that is how we reach our tendriling roots out through rich soil to find one another more widely than we had imagined. Because nurturing community is liberation work. Nurturing community is liberation work, not work that ends at the doors of a limited or particular community, but work that must begin in specific, materially intertwined communities like this one. The community is where we build our muscles for connection, by caring for one another, by including one another, by freeing and supporting one another. It is in communities just like this one that we learn in our bones the words of the poet Gwendolyn Brooks. We are each other's harvest. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. It is here that we grow in our own hearts something different than the training of supremacy systems toward isolation and competition. Here that we first live into something different, that freedom of heart, that love that bursts limits. Because here we love the person who annoys us. We love through conflict. We love in grief. We love at the sickbed. We love through death. We love past the limits we thought we felt before. And here's the thing about love that has burst its limits. It keeps going. Just like live oak root systems, truly freed hearts keep reaching out. They bring a casserole to their small group member, and they take one to the mobile kitchen too. They get their friend Plan B and stock up more for anyone who needs it. Truly freed hearts keep reaching out. And communities grounded in a theology of interdependence and mutual thriving carry that grounding with them wherever they go, growing their nodes of connection, knowing that we are all each other's harvest. We are all each other's business. We are all each other's magnitude and bond. The powers that be would love for us to turn away from the material communities that feed us, to channel all of our energies upward and outward into hierarchical structures built on extraction and oppression. Barring that, they would prefer our isolation, deep, solitary roots reaching only down. They would prefer us to make decisions about our activism feeling alone and forgetting that we got us. And that is why it is the work of faith, the work of our lives, to entwine our roots. To entwine our roots in just the rich soil of where we are, in a network that grows out and out until it holds all from the onslaught of unnatural disaster that is trying desperately to shape our world. This is the defense against that unnatural disaster. At its very starting place, it's bringing the casserole. It's giving the ride. It's moving the furniture and then moving it back again. We feed our love into the soil where our lives actually grow. Our neighborhoods and congregations and mutual aid societies, the places where real life communities are formed and shaped and nurtured and stretching out, dreaming of the whole world reflecting the love they have found in those roots. This is how liberation comes. We feed each other. Small gestures that nourish in ways beyond the ways we may think we know, in ways that free our hearts into a limit-bursting love, in roots that reach inexorably out, out, out like the live oaks until all are bound and no storm can tear us down, because we are all held, all grounded, and ready to thrive. May we make it so together. May we get us